All right, guys. Today we're gonna be reacting to surprising truth behind the rise of single black parents. Thomas Sowell. Let's jump in and see what's going on.
From the 1960s onward, much of the transplanted Southern culture would, like Black English, be seen as sacrosanct features of a distinctive black identity, despite their mirroring very similar cultural patterns among Southern whites in times past. Not all black Americans, of course, retain this anachronistic culture, for the spread of education and the growing experience of the counterproductive effects of the Southern redneck way of life eroded it over time for many blacks, as happened also among the whites who brought this culture over from Britain. Even
Mm.
during the era of slavery, those blacks who were house servants in more educated homes tended to pick up a different culture, giving their descendants enduring advantages over the descendants of field hands. Contemporary black ghetto culture in the United States is not, however, a simple linear extrapolation from the culture of Southern whites. First of all, most black Americans today are no longer part of the ghetto culture. Moreover, aside from influences peculiar to the circumstances of blacks, profound changes in the larger American society around them have also had an influence, both positive and negative. The burgeoning of the American welfare state in the second half of the 20th century and the declining effectiveness of the American criminal justice system at the same time allowed borrowed and counterproductive cultural traits to continue and flourish among those blacks who had not yet moved beyond that culture.
Isn't that interesting? They were doing so good before the 1960s, man. But no, we had to just launch a war against poverty. So let's just launch the welfare.
Thereby prolonging the life of a chaotic, counterproductive, dangerous, and self-destructive subculture in many urban ghettos. Crime and violence were among the features of this subculture
Look at that, bro. There's no welfare system that will fix this.
that were artificially prolonged. Prior to the 1960s, while black males had a higher murder rate than other males, their murder rate was also declining more sharply than the general murder rate. Subsequently, the general murder rate in the United States and the murder rate for black males both reversed and began rising sharply, that of black males more sharply than others.
Wow.
In short, the drastic changes in law enforcement and social morality during the 1960s had particularly adverse effects on the behavior and actions of blacks and on black victims of the criminals in their midst. Intellectuals have also played a role, along with the welfare state, in prolonging and legitimizing a counterproductive culture among blacks. Nowhere was the effect of the white liberalism of the 1960s on the social evolution of black culture more devastating than in the disintegration of the black family.
That is
The
so
raw
sad.
facts are these. As of 1960, 51% of black females between the ages of 15 and 44 were married and living with their husbands. Another 20% were divorced, widowed, or separated. And only 28% had never been married.
Mm.
20 years later, only 31% of black women in these age brackets were married and living with their husbands,
Damn, bro, that's so quick, man.
while 48% had never married. By 1994, an absolute majority, 56%, of black women in these age brackets were never married, and only 25% were married and living with their husbands.
Wow.
Accordingly, while 2/3 of black children were living with both parents in 1960, only 1/3 were by 1994. While only 22% of black children were born to unmarried women in 1960, 70% were by 1994.
That's insane. That's insane. There you go, folks. That's the problem right there, man. We took the fathers out of the home and substitute them with the welfare system.
White liberals, instead of comparing what has happened to the black family since the liberal welfare state policies of the 1960s were put into practice, compare black families to white families and conclude that the higher rates of broken homes and unwed motherhood among blacks are due to a legacy of slavery. But why the large-scale disintegration of the black
Perfect cop out. The perfect cop out.
family should have begun 100 years after slavery is left unexplained. Whatever the situation of the black family relative to the white family, in the past or the present, it is clear that broken homes were far more common among blacks at the end of the 20th century than they were in the middle of that century or at the beginning of that century, even though blacks at the beginning of the 20th century were just one generation out of slavery. The widespread and casual abandonment of their children and of the women who bore them by black fathers in the ghettos of the late 20th century was, in fact, a painfully ironic contrast with what had happened in the immediate aftermath of slavery 100
Wow.
years earlier, when observers in the South reported desperate efforts of freed blacks to find family members who had been separated from them during the era of slavery.
Man,
A
that's crazy.
contemporary journalist reported meeting black men walking along the roads of Virginia and North Carolina, many of whom had walked across the state or across more than one state looking for their families.
Wow.
Others reported similar strenuous and even desperate efforts of newly freed blacks to find members of their families.
So sad, man. So sad. So sad. I mean, it just shows you how the welfare system has destroyed families, man. Blacks have suffered more, right? But all the demographics are going through the same problem. 1960, very important dates, very important year. It's just literally like a 180 switch. Let me know what you guys think. Thomas Sowell's genius, American icon. He know what he's talking about. Let me know what you guys think.